Ha ha, said I. To be sure, I have no right to laugh at you. $1.5 million of money is too serious a matter of mirth. But you are not about to establish a third link in your chain. You will not find any special connection between your pirates and a goat. Pirates, have nothing to do with goats. They appertain to the farming interest. But I've just said that the figure was not that of a goat. Well, a kid then. Pretty much the same thing. Pretty much, but not altogether, said Legrand. You may have heard of one Captain Kidd. I had once looked upon the figure of the animal as a kind of punning or hieroglyphical signature. I say signature because its position upon the vellum suggested this idea. The death's head at the corner diagonally opposite had in the same manner. The air of a stamp or seal. But I was sorely put out by the absence of all else, of the body to my imagined instrument, of the text for my context. I presume you expected to find a letter between the stamp and the signature? Something of that kind. The fact is, I felt irresistibly impressed with a presentiment of some vast good fortune impending. I can scarcely say why. Perhaps, after all, it wasn't rather a desire than an actual belief. But do you know that Jupiter's silly words about the bug being of solid gold had a remarkable effect upon my fancy? And then the series of accidents and coincidences. These were so very extraordinary. Do you observe how mere an accident it was that these events should have occurred upon the sole day of all the year in which it has been, or maybe sufficiently cool for fire, that without the fire, or without the intervention of the dog at the precise moment in which he appeared, I should never have become aware of the death's head, and so never possessor of the treasure. But proceed, I am all impatience. Well, you have heard, of course, the many stories current, the thousand vague rumors afloat about money buried somewhere upon the Atlantic coast by Kidd and his associates. These rumors must have had some foundation in fact. And that the rumors have so existed so long and so continuous could have resulted, it appeared to me, only from the circumstances of buried treasure still remaining entombed. Had Kidd concealed his plunder for a time, and afterward reclaimed it, the rumors would not scarcely have reached us in their present unvarying form. You will observe that the stories told are all about money seekers and not about money finders. Had the pirate recovered his money, there the affair would have dropped. It seemed to me that some accident, say the loss of a memorandum indicating its locality, had deprived him of the means of recovering it, and that this accident had become known to his followers, who otherwise might have never heard that the treasure had been concealed at all, and who, busying themselves in vain, because unguided attempts to regain it had first given birth and then universal currency to the reports which are now so common. Have you ever heard of any important treasure being unearthed along the coast? Never. But that Kidd's accumulations were immense is well known. I took it for granted, therefore, that the earth still held them, and you will scarcely be surprised when I tell you that I felt a hope, nearly amounting to certainty, that the parchment so strangely found involved a lost record of the place of deposit. But how did you proceed? I held the vellum again to the fire, after increasing the heat, but nothing appeared. I now thought it possible that the coating of dirt might have something to do with the failure, and so I rinsed the parchment by pouring warm water over it. And having done this, I placed it in a tin pan, with the skull downward, and put the pan upon a furnace of lighted charcoal. In a few minutes, the pan having become thoroughly heated, I removed the slip, and to my inexpressible joy found it spotted in several places, with what appeared to be figures arranged in lines. Again I placed it in the pan and suffered it to remain another minute. Upon taking it off, the whole was just as you see it now. Here Legrand, having reheated the parchment, submitted it to my inspection. The following characters were rudely traced in red tint between the death's head and the goat. But, said I, returning him the slip, I am as much in the dark as ever. Were all the jewels of Golconda awaiting me upon my solution of this enigma, I am quite sure I should be unable to earn them. And yet, said Legrand, the solution is by no means so difficult as you might be led to imagine from the first hasty inspection of the characters. These characters, as any one might readily guess, form a cipher. That is to say, they convey a meaning. But then, from what is known of Kidd, I could not suppose him capable of constructing any of the more abstruse cryptographs. I made up my mind at once that this was of a simple species, such, however, as would appear to the crude intellect of the sailor absolutely insoluble without the key. And you really solved it? Readily. I have solved others of an obtruseness 10,000 times greater. Circumstances and a certain bias of mine have led me to take interest in such riddles, and it may be well doubted whether human ingenuity can construct an enigma of the kind with which human ingenuity may not, by proper application, resolve. In fact, having once established connected and legible characters, I scarcely gave it a thought to the mere difficulty of developing their import. In the present case, indeed, in all cases of secret writing, the first question regards the language of the cipher. For the principles of solution, so far especially as more the simple ciphers are concerned, depend upon, and are varied by, the genius of this particular idiom. In general, there is no alternative but experiment, directed by probabilities, of every tongue known to him who attempts the solution, until the true one be attained. But with the cipher now before us, all difficulty was removed by the signature. The pun upon the word kid is appreciable in no other language than the English. But for this consideration, I have begun my attempts with the Spanish and the French, as the tongues in which a secret of this kind would most naturally have been written by a pirate of the Spanish main. As it was, I assumed the cryptography to be English. You observe there are no divisions between the words. Had there been divisions, the task would have been comparatively easy. In such cases, I should have commenced with the collation and analysis of the shorter words, and had a word of the single letter occurred as is most likely, A or I, for example, I should have considered the solution as assured. But there being no division, my first step was to ascertain the predominant letters, as well as the least frequent. Counting all, I constructed a table thus. Now, in English, the letter which most frequently occurs is E. Afterward, the succession runs thus: A, O, I, D, H, N, R, S, T, U, Y, C, F, G, L, M, W, B, K, P, Q, X, Z. E predominates so remarkably that an individual sentence of any length is rarely seen in which it is not the prevailing character. Here then we have, in the very beginning, the groundwork for something more than a mere guess. The general use which may be made of this table is obvious, but in this particular cipher, we shall only very partially require its aid. As our predominant character is 8, we will commence by assuming it as the E of the natural alphabet. To verify the supposition, let us observe that if the 8 be seen often in couples, for E is double with great frequency in English, in such words, for example, as meet, fleet, speed, seen, been, agree, etc. In the present instance, we see it doubled no less than 5 times, although the cryptograph is brief. Let us assume 8, then, as E. Now, of all words in the language, the is the most usual. Let us see, therefore, whether there are not repetitions of any 3 characters, in the same order of collocation, the last of them being 8. If we were to discover repetitions of such letters, so arranged, they will probably represent the word the. Upon inspection, we find no less than 7 such arrangements, the characters being 48. We may therefore assume that semicolon represents T. Four represents H. And 8 represents E. The last being now well confirmed. Thus a great step has been taken. But having established a single word, we are enabled to establish a vastly important point. That is to say, several commencements and terminations of other words. Let us refers, for example, to the last instance but one, in which the combination semicolon 48 occurs, not far from the end of the chapter.